Hi, I'm Dr. Grace Hammond. Welcome to Learning Middle English. And today I want to talk to you about what you need to learn now that we've covered a little bit of the history of the language and the manuscripts that these works would have come in. Let's get down to the business of actually picking what you want to read and what you want to practice in. So there are two main choices for you as we begin. And after you begin to get acquainted and comfortable with these two main choices, you can potentially branch out to other options. But there's a reason why we start where we start. You'll either want to start with reading my favorite lady, Julian of Norwich, or you'll want to start with Geoffrey Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales. So, hold on to those for a second, and I'll get back to them in a minute. The reason why we want to start with those two is because they are written in dialects that are easier for us to understand today, dialects that are closer to our modern English. You might be wondering, okay, I've heard the word dialect before, but I'm not 100% sure what it is. A dialect is a particular kind of a language, like underneath the broader umbrella of that language. So for example, American Southern English is a dialect of English. It has different vocabulary words than, say, what Northeastern American English might use. It has a different accent than it. And today, dialects are a little more unusual than they used to be because of television and radio. Our language has become a little bit standardized. And the example of, say, American Southern English as a dialect is not exactly the best one because some dialects in Middle English are very different from each other, almost as to be a separate language. Whereas Southern American English versus Northeastern American English is still very much the same language and can be very well understood by one another. Although one time, I'm from Arizona, so I have a very difficult to discern accent. It's very bland. I don't give away my birth location very easily, but I did go to a Dunkin' Donuts one time in Massachusetts when I was 12, and the worker at the Dunkin' Donuts, who had a very, very, very thick Boston accent, did not understand what I was saying. So that was kind of my first taste into, a dialect can actually be surprisingly difficult to transcend. So there are different dialects in Middle English, and there were a ton of them, way more than today, because they didn't have anything standardized like a radio or a television newscaster speaking in a standard accent so that it was mutually intelligible. Instead, they had extremely particular localized language. So we read Chaucer very often in Middle English, like beginner courses, because Chaucer writes in the London dialect of Middle English, meaning the kind of English spoken in and around London. And the London dialect is the dialect that modern English comes from. It was the most influential versus something like Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, which is a fantastic medieval poem, but it has a dialect from the northwest of England. And so as you can see, if I open it up and show it to you, this is a pretty tough thing to scan. It doesn't look very much like modern English. And it has, in fact, some symbols, some letters that we don't even use anymore, like a thorn or a yod. So these are very different, and we'll dive into those later after we've had a little bit more practice with reading Middle English. But this is going to be a tough dialect to read, whereas Chaucer or Julian are easier. So now, which should you read? What would you like? Would you prefer something funny, verse, something with a lot of variety, then I would recommend you start with the Canterbury Tales. This edition that I have is nice and accessible. I know that it's backwards on the film, but what can you do? This is the Norton Critical Edition of the Canterbury Tales. It's 15 tales in the general prologue, and it's an edition aimed for students. So it has a lot of nice glossing. It has some really helpful dictionary work. It's a good edition if you're just starting out. Penguin also has an edition, and Oxford has an edition too. Those are both good. And you can get all of these for super, super cheap on a website like Thrift Books. When I just went on there to look it up, I think I saw some that were $3. So you can pick up a very cheap copy of Chaucer. And what's really nice about the Chaucer too is that Harvard has a whole website that is based off of learning Middle English alongside reading the Canterbury Tales. So it has a bunch of guides, and it has a really nice interlinear modern English translation, which means that it has a line of Middle English and then the modern English underneath, line of Middle English, modern English underneath. And that website is at chaucer.fas.harvard.edu. And that can be very, very useful. Don't forget, though, that if you don't have the cash to buy a copy, a nice student copy of the Canterbury Tales, these books are all public domain, so you can find them pretty much anywhere online for free. So if you're feeling something a little more serious, or if you've already read Julian in a modern English translation, then you can start with Julian of Norwich and read her showings. And this is the copy I have. That is a Middle English copy. It's by the editors of it are Nicholas Watson and Jacqueline Jenkins, and it's pretty reasonably priced. It has the long text and the short text in it, which is nice, and it's published by the Pennsylvania State University Press. So this is my kind of workhorse edition that I like a lot. But there's a lot of other choices out there, like with the Chaucer. There's Penguin, and there's plenty of Middle English versions out there, as well as free online access, because it's in the public domain. And if you're looking for a translation to go with it, because as you begin, I recommend making sure you have access to a modern English translation while you read, so that you can check yourself, make sure you're not going down a strange path. This is my favorite edition of a translation of Julian. It's in this Classics of Western Spirituality series. It's published by the Paulist Press, and it's a good edition. It's translated by College and Walsh, and it also can be found for very, very cheap. So these two together, that's what I would recommend if you want to read Julian. With the Canterbury Tales, I like the Norton, and using the Chaucer website that Harvard puts up. So all you need as we start to work on this together is to pick which one you want, to make sure that you have both a Middle English copy and a modern English translation handy in some form. And then paper and pen. That's it.